Every single day, right? Across every continent, millions of people just stop what they're doing, close their eyes, and pray. Some are praying for physical healing or maybe protection in times of danger. Others are asking for wisdom when they're faced with an absolutely impossible choice. And, some just whisper a simple, "God help me." It's this incredible phenomenon that literally transcends borders and generations. And in this explainer, we're going to unpack that fascinating dynamic between faith and science. Okay, let's dive into this because this right here is an extraordinary question. Seriously, it's the ultimate human puzzle. It has baffled scientists, philosophers, and theologians for centuries. Think about it. Does prayer actually influence external events in ways we just can't understand? Or are its effects entirely psychological? Bringing comfort, hope, and resilience. Basically changing the person who's praying rather than the external world. Well, today, we're exploring one of the greatest mysteries of faith and human experience to see exactly where the truth might lie.
Section 1. A universal human need.
So to really understand prayer today, we first kind of have to look backward. Long before modern civilization, human beings instinctively reached beyond themselves, especially during moments of fear, profound gratitude, or deep uncertainty. The ancient Egyptians prayed. The Israelites, the Greeks, the Romans, they all prayed. In fact, some of the absolute oldest recorded writings in human history are literally prayers. And at the exact same time, people across Asia, Africa, and the Americas were developing their own rich, complex traditions of prayer. I mean, despite having radically different cultures, varying languages, and completely distinct belief systems, this one practice remained remarkably common everywhere you look. The sheer universal nature of prayer strongly suggests that it answers a deep, fundamental human need, even if people across the globe understand it in entirely different ways.
Section 2. The biblical viewpoint. Let's move on and see how this builds into the biblical texts, because Scripture presents prayer as far, far more than just some empty ritual. In the Bible, prayer is distinctly defined as communication. It's an ongoing relationship with God. Now, what's absolutely vital to understand here is that the Bible doesn't actually promise every single request will be answered exactly the way you expect it to be. Instead, it encourages believers to pray with this mix of faith, humility, and persistence. It really frames it as a living, breathing dialogue rather than, say, a transactional wishing well.
And throughout Scripture, you see people engaging in that dialogue across literally every conceivable facet of the human experience. I mean, they prayed before terrifying battles. They prayed during devastating famines. Actually, much like how people today might pray before a really daunting medical procedure or during a financial crisis, right? They prayed in times of immense joy and in moments of absolute crushing despair. Even Jesus himself regularly withdrew from the massive crowd surrounding him just simply to pray. It was an anchor in every possible situation.
Section 3. The limits of science. But how do we measure that anchor today? Over the past several decades, modern researchers have spent immense amounts of time and resources attempting to study prayer from a strictly scientific perspective. And honestly, it's a fascinating endeavor. They're attempting to quantify the invisible, which is, well, it's a bit like trying to catch the wind in a test tube. When researchers look at whether prayer affects health outcomes or external events, the findings are entirely mixed. In fact, studies find absolutely no clear evidence that prayer consistently produces measurable changes in the external world. However, and this is a big however, when the focus shifts to internal metrics, the data shows that personal prayer genuinely can reduce stress, improve emotional well-being, and really increase resilience and hope for a lot of people.
You see, the friction here really comes down to the tools we're using. Science is exceptionally excellent at investigating and measuring natural processes, things like biological stress markers or emotional well-being. But faith involves personal belief, intricate human relationships, and ultimate questions about God's actions. Because prayer operates in this highly subjective, relational space, it is incredibly difficult to study using scientific methods alone. The big questions about God often lie completely beyond what a scientific experiment can just directly test in a laboratory setting.
Section 4. Unexpected answers and peace. Now, what's really interesting about this is it brings us to a major paradigm shift. A lot of people operate under the assumption that if prayer works, it absolutely must always produce some dramatic, undeniable miracle. But if we look closely at the texts and at personal experiences, it actually reframes the very concept of an answered prayer. Sometimes, yes, external circumstances do change, but very often, people receive an unexpected inner strength to simply endure a difficult situation. Sometimes you get wisdom instead of an immediate, easy solution, and sometimes a profound peace completely replaces fear. For many believers, these deep internal transformations are themselves highly meaningful answers to prayer. They might not trigger a sensor in a lab for sure, but they are deeply real and tangible in the human experience.
Throughout history, so many people have reported experiences they firmly believe were answers to prayer. We're talking unexpected recoveries from illness, remarkable life-saving coincidences, changed lives, and these profound moments of distinct guidance. While others might look at those exact same events and interpret them differently, maybe pointing to natural explanations or sheer chance, it's important to approach these stories with a balance of openness and humility. Not every unexplained event is necessarily miraculous, right? But not every meaningful human experience can be fully reduced to numbers and measurements either. Recognizing the limits of both absolute certainty and absolute skepticism gives us the space for honest, genuine exploration.
Section 5. The power of relationship.
So if the primary outcome of prayer isn't always a measurable external miracle, what is the ultimate goal? Well, the Bible consistently presents prayer as something much, much deeper than just a simple tool for getting results. When you look at what prayer actually cultivates in a person's life, it builds trust, it fosters a healthy dependence and profound gratitude, it generates hope. But notice that the absolute largest piece of this puzzle is relationship. For Christians, prayer is not primarily about controlling reality to suit their needs. It's about drawing closer to the one they believe actually created that reality. And perhaps that relationship, that connection, is itself one of prayer's greatest, most unmeasurable gifts.
So the crucial point is this. For thousands upon thousands of years, humanity has prayed. In that time, mighty empires have risen and completely fallen. Entire civilizations have disappeared into the sands of time. Technology has radically transformed literally every aspect of how we live and communicate. And yet, prayer remains. It survived as a steadfast act of faith for some, a vital source of inner strength for others, while still.
I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought. Do you believe prayer can affect reality in ways science just cannot fully explain? Or do you think its absolute greatest power lies in changing the hearts and minds of the very people who pray? Take a moment to think about that, and I'd really love for you to share your thoughts. If you enjoy exploring biblical wisdom, ancient mysteries, faith, consciousness, and the unseen world, be sure to subscribe and join us for our next explainer as we continue to journey into the absolute deepest questions of human existence.